وقلبي كليم وعيني صارت كفي السقاء. أئن طويلا وما من دواء فقومي صاروا كما الببغاء. لساني سليم وقلبي كليم.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد, and welcome to another video on the Islamic Knowledge YouTube channel. Now, alhamdulillah, we have made a video on a number of books written on the biography and you could say the virtues of Abu Hanifa. From amongst them, we have made a video on Fada'ilu Abi Hanifa of Ibn Abil Awam, and we've also made a video on Uqudul Juman written by Hafiz Muhammad ibn Yusuf al-Salihi raḥimahullah ta'ala. Now, this is the third video that I wanted to make on another very early book written on the manaqib, i.e. the virtues of Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. Now, there's two prints and I want to kind of look at both of them, but primarily we want to look at the content of the older one and then kind of compare it with the new one. So we've got Akhbar Abi Hanifah wa Ashabihi written by للإمام المحدث المؤرخ الكبير الفقيه al-Qadi Abu Abdullah al-Husayn ibn Ali al-Saymari rahimahullah ta'ala, who passed away in 436. So this is fairly early. You could say he is essentially a contemporary of Imam al-Quduri rahimahullah, who passed away in 428 Hijri, and he is also a student of Abu Bakr al-Jassas al-Razi rahimahullah, who is a very, very important figure when it comes to the Iraqi school of the Hanafi madhab. Now, he was actually a teacher of al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, so that's why this book is actually really important. In fact, al-Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah, when he comes to the virtues of Imam Abu Hanifa, he narrates a number of them through al-Saymari, because al-Saymari is his teacher in regards to some of these narrations. Now, he probably wrote a much larger book on the biography of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah. This is because in his biography, in al-Saymari's biography written by al-Qadi al-Qurashi in his al-Jawahir al-Mudiyya, so when we check the biography of al-Saymari in al-Jawahir al-Mudiyya written by al-Qadi al-Qurashi, it's mentioned in there that he's got a mujallad dakhm on the manaqib of Abu Hanifa and his companions. So this is not a mujallad dakhm, this is not a very thick copy of the book, so therefore we must assume, wallahu a'lam, that he must have written a larger book than this. Now, there's an interesting story about him and his conversation and his interaction with some of the scholars of his time. For example, his interaction with Imam Abu al-Hasan ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah, the famous muhaddith. Now, there's a story in here that's quite interesting about when he went to the gathering of ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah, and he actually acquired some of the sunan of ad-Daraqutni rahimahullah. By the way, he's written in a number of different fields. He's even written in usul al-fiqh. His book Masail al-Khilaf fi usul al-fiqh has been printed very recently. So it says here in the biography, and this is by the way printed by Mullah Abu al-Wafa al-Afghani, this old print and this new print that has just come out. When I say just come out, it has been out for over a year, I believe now. It's been printed with the tahqiq of Sa'id Bakdash, printed by Darus Sarraj, and this book we're going to have a look at in just a short amount of time. So let's go back to this one and look at what Mullah Abu al-Wafa al-Afghani has recorded in regards to our author of this book, and we're going to have a look at it in just a bit of detail just now. So it says here, سمعته يقول. So this is now Khatib speaking about his teacher al-Saymari in his Tarikh Baghdad. He says, سمعته يقول, I heard Saymari say to me once, حضرت عند أبي الحسن الدارقطني وسمعت منه أجزاء من كتاب السنن الذي صنفه. He says, I came to Daraqutni and I heard a little bit of his sunan. قال فقرئ عليه حديث غورك السعدي عن جعفر بن محمد الحديث المسند في زكاة الخيل وفي الكتاب غورك ضعيف. فقال أبو الحسن ومن دون غورك ضعفاء. He says غورك is ضعيف and everyone below him is also ضعيف in the sanad. فقيل الذي رواه عن غورك هو أبو يوسف القاضي. He says, someone said to him, well, the person who's narrated it from غورك is Abu Yusuf, and we know Daraqutni was quite harsh against the Hanafis. فقال أعور بين عميان. He says, you know, I don't want to translate that, but he says essentially that he is also, he makes a disparaging comment. وكان أبو حامد الإصفرايني حاضرا فقال إلحقوا هذا الكلام في الكتاب. So Abu Hamid al-Isfaraini says, write down what the Shaykh has said, the disparaging comment. قال الصيمري. So Saymari says that this was the reason why I left Daraqutni. فكان ذلك السبب انصرافي عن المجلس ولم أعد إلى أبي الحسن بعدها. He says, I never went back to Abu al-Hasan al-Daraqutni. But he says, then I thought to myself, ثم قال ليتني لم أفعل. If only I hadn't done that and I hadn't left Daraqutni. وإيش ضر أبا الحسن انصرافي. And how did me turning away from Abu al-Hasan al-Daraqutni hurt ad-Darqutni in any shape or form. And this is kind of like really, you could say, a bit of regret from al-Saymari that he turned away from going to the gatherings of ad-Darqutni. And it also shows the kind of respect that if a person has a kind of view that's really disparaging against someone that you like, obviously he's a Hanafi, so he wouldn't have liked that comment, but he kind of thinks later on that, you know, it's just his opinion. He may be harsh against certain people, but I need to respect some of his other opinions. I could have just sat in his gathering and could have benefited from it, but I decided to kind of move away. Now, one of the major issues in this book is that one of the common narrators that you'll find within this book is this narrator here, and you'll find him on almost every other page in this book, Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Mughallis. And this individual is a very, very problematic individual. Now, this book, by the way, is only about 174 pages, so it's not massive, but despite that, on every other page you will find, or in fact every other narration almost, you'll find that there's a person called Mukram, or you know, some have pronounced his name as Mukarram, but Mukram is how it has been written in the Tarikh Baghdad print. That's how Sheikh Bashar Awad has put the dhabt, but Allah knows best. قال حدثنا أحمد بن محمد بن مغلس. Now, if you look at this individual now, you will notice that there are some very, very disparaging comments made regarding him. Now, first of all, I want to look at Tarikh Baghdad. So if you look at this book here, so we've got Tarikh Baghdad, titled Tarikh Madinat al-Salam. We've got his biography on this narrator, and his name is Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Salt ibn al-Mughallis ibn Akhi Jubara ibn al-Mughallis al-Himmani yukna Abul Abbas. You can see Al-Khatib covers all the different names of this narrator, because in this book you will find his name coming in with like 5 or 6 or 7 different versions, and all of them will make you think that it's a different person, but it's actually the same person. And there are some really harsh comments about him. For example, Khatib also clarifies, بعض الناس يقول فيه أحمد بن صل. Some call him Ahmad ibn Sal, some call him Ahmad ibn Atiyya. So you might think they're different people, but it's all different names for the same person. You've got here, Ibn Adi says, ما رأيت في الكذابين أقل حياء منه. And Ibn Adi actually met him. Ad-Darqutni, who didn't meet him, he says Ibn Salt هذا يضع الأحاديث. Another scholar who met him was Ibn Hibban. Ibn Hibban also has really, really negative comments about him. And a Hanafi scholar by the name of Abdul Baqi ibn al-Qani', he's also got really, really negative comments on him, and Ibn Hajar has recorded all of this in his Lisan al-Mizan. So, I mean, you'll find his name with so many different versions. You will find Ahmad ibn Muhammad in certain places, and it'll always be Mukarram or Mukram, however you want to say it, narrating from him. So in most places anyway. Here you can see Ahmad ibn Atiyya. So you're probably thinking that's a different person, and Ahmad ibn Muhammad ibn Mughallis is a different person, but they're actually the same person. And it seems like either Mukarram or someone below him used to keep changing his name so that we don't find out who it is. But it is him, and he used to fabricate stories in the virtue of Abu Hanifa, or he either wrote a book on the virtues of Abu Hanifa, as some have said, and some said he never wrote a book, but he used to narrate these virtues. In some places you'll find his name as Abu Abbas ibn Akhi Jabbarah ibn al-Mughallis. You'll find all these different Abu Abbas sometimes on its own without Ibn Akhi Jabbarah with it. So you'll find all of these different names for him, and unfortunately he's almost everywhere. So you got Mukram Haddathana Ahmad, you got Mukram Qala Haddathana Ahmad ibn Atiyya. Now, in terms of defense of Ahmad ibn Salt, we notice that most Hanafis, and it could be possible that Ahmad ibn Salt started narrating all of these stories, by the way. He is living between 300 to 400 Hijri, which is, you could say, kind of fresh off the fitna of the Khalqul Quran issue, and it could be that these stories are being made up by him, possibly, simply to defend Abu Hanifah raḥimahullah, and to kind of against the really negative comments that were made wrongly about him due to the fitna to Khalqul Quran being carried out by some of the Hanafis. Now, one of the scholars who has tried to defend Ahmad ibn Salt has been Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari raḥimahullah in his book Ta'nib al-Khatib. So if we have a look here on page 321, but he also kind of says, وَلَسْنَا فِي حَاجَةٍ إِلَى رِوَايَاتِهِ فِي مَنَاقِبِ أَبِي حَنِيفَةَ. He says we don't need his narrations when it comes to the manaqib of Abu Hanifa rahimahullah ta'ala. And this is what I'm going to use to kind of connect it with this latest edition of Akhbar Abi Hanifa wa Ashabihi. One of the things that Sheikh Zahid al-Kawthari rahimahullah ta'ala mentions in here, and he kind of defends him to some degree, but he does say, well, you know, there is definitely a kalam and comments made against him, but he says, well, you know, there's comments made for people who you have narrated from them, things that are disparaging against Abu Hanifa, and they're worse than Ibn al-Mughallis. But in any case, there is something very interesting that Sheikh Zahid says in one place here. He says that the majority of what Ibn Salt has narrated, the meaning of it has been narrated by loads of other scholars. So he says between pages 321 to 326, wherein he mentions this quite clearly. Now, this is the issue that I have, perhaps you could say, with this edition of the book, which is the one by Saeed Baktash. Now, when he came to this print, a number of scholars have said this, but Sheikh Awama states that there are three things that we can do with our Islamic literature right now when it comes to printing. We can print that which has not yet been printed. We can reprint that which needs to be printed because there's a lot of mistakes in the old edition. Or we can reprint something that has been printed pretty well already, but it needs tajdeed, right? So those are the three types of efforts we can put on our Islamic literature. Now, when it comes to this one, it seems like it falls under the third category. I don't know how much, you could say, how much improvement it has from the old edition. I have read the introduction. He has a, semi, you could say, detailed biography on al-Saymari. He does say he had about 3 to 4 more manuscripts than Mullah Abul Wafa, and he says that it has corrected, added a few extra details on certain places where there have been about 2-3 lines that have been dropped, which is still not major in the grand scheme of things. But one of the things I was hoping he would do, but he did not do, was kind of see all those narrations wherein we have Ahmad ibn Salt in the narration. Could he find a support for that narration and find someone else narrating that same story or incident of Abu Hanifah raḥimahullah? And in that way, we could now say these narrations of Ahmad ibn Salt, they have support, and therefore it seems like he's not lied or done anything problematic here. And these ones, he's alone in this narration. Unfortunately, he did not do that. So if you check the footnotes, it's essentially just pretty empty, so to speak. And when it comes to all of this area here, he just puts in red all of those things which he thinks are slightly important. Sometimes it's really random. فَسُئِلَ أَبُو حَنِيفَةَ عَنِ النَّبِيذِ. He's put that in red because he thinks that stands out. And this edition, by the way, is a lot more pages. It's 288 pages. He does not discuss the Ahmad ibn Salt issue. He does not touch on Imam al-Kawthari rahimahullah's comment about how Ahmad ibn Salt's narrations, the meanings of it are found in other narrations. It would be really good if he did that. So personally, I would think if you've already got this edition, I don't know if there's a huge benefit in getting this one. Obviously, you can do that. It's beneficial if you like new and more easily readable editions. But this one's pretty easily readable as well. And I just want to go through a few stories. By the way, there were 3 people who interacted with Ahmad ibn Salt. There was also Tabarani, who narrates from him in his Al-Mu'jam al-Saghir. And from amongst the Hanafis who defended him was also Taqiyuddin al-Tamimi in his At-Tabaqat al-Saniyah. Now, there are some interesting stories, and I will try to share this on the Islamic Knowledge Telegram channel, inshallah. These notes, there are more that you could add as well, inshallah. But there are some interesting incidents. I want to share 1 or 2 if I can, we have gone over time, but I do want to share 1 or 2. I want to share one about the wisdom of Imam Zufar rahimahullah ta'ala, and that is on page 112. It says here that Anba'ana Muhammad ibn, and again we just want to check, this narration seems a bit better. Can you say it's Abu Bakr ad-Damaghani narrating from At-Tahawi? So this seems to be from the book of At-Tahawi, and At-Tahawi was also one of the early writers in the Manaqib of Abu Hanifah rahimahullah. Unfortunately, we've not found his book, and if Allah wills we find it, we make dua, we do, because that one would be a lot better than probably the narrations of Ibn Salt. قال كان سبب انتقال زفر إلى أبي حنيفة أنه كان من أصحاب الحديث. Firstly, this story speaks about how Imam Zufar rahimahullah moved to Imam Abu Hanifah rahimahullah. He says that a mas'ala came to him, فأتى أبا حنيفة فسأله عنها. He came to Abu Hanifah rahimahullah, and Imam Abu Hanifah rahimahullah answered it. فقال له من أين قلت هذا? Imam Zufar asked Imam Abu Hanifah, how did you say this? قال لحديث كذا وللقياس من جهة كذا. Imam Abu Hanifah said, due to that hadith and applying analogical deduction and thinking of this reasoning and that reasoning. Then he asked Imam Zufar a few more questions, that what would you do if the mas'ala was like this? Imam Zufar says فكنت فيها أعمى مني في الأولى. He says I was even more stuck than I was initially. So that is what kind of made him more interested in kind of joining Abu Hanifah, because of his intelligence, because of the intelligence that he noticed with Imam Abu Hanifah rahimahullah ta'ala. There's another story here with regards to Imam Zufar rahimahullah ta'ala. When Imam Zufar rahimahullah came to Basra, قدم زفر البصرة فجعل يجلس عند الشيوخ الذين تقدمت لهم الرئاسة فيحتج لأقوالهم بما ليس عندهم. He would go to all of the people, all of the early scholars there, all of the scholars that were in Basra, and all of their opinions, he would give them extra dalail and extra, you could say, juristic reasoning to back up their opinion. opinions. فَيُعْجِبُونَ مِنْ ذَلِكَ. They would be so happy, like, whoa, that's another reason we have to hold this opinion that we have. ثُمَّ يَقُولُ هَا هُنَا قَوْلٌ آخَرْ أَحْسَنُ مِنْ هَذَا. Then he would tell him, I've got an even better opinion for which I can back up with even more opinions, with more juristic reasoning if you let me. Then he would mention it. وَيَحْتَجُّ لَهُ. And he would then use it as evidence, but he wouldn't inform them that it's the view of Abu Hanifa. Then when they were satisfied that this opinion is the best opinion, he would say to them, فَإِنَّهُ قَوْلُ أَبِي حَنِيفَةَ. He would tell them, this is the view of Abu Hanifa. Do you know that? فَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ قَوْلٌ حَسَنٌ. Then they would say, no problem, it's a fantastic opinion. We don't care who said it. And he would keep doing this until he brought them all back in line with the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa raḥimahullah ta'ala. And this story too, Allahu alam, in terms of the sanad, it looks a bit better. Again, I've not done a deep dive, but this story is quite interesting of how Imam Zufar raḥimahullah used his real intellect and his wisdom to turn all the people of Basra into loving the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa raḥimahullah ta'ala. In fact, Imam Zufar, he is so downplayed sometimes by some of us Hanafis, that when he would debate with Imam Abu Yusuf rahimahullah, he would say to him, إن هذه أبواب كثيرة فَإِنْ أَرَدْتَ أَن تَفِرَّ فَخُذْ فِي أَيِّهَا شِئْتَ. When he would debate with Imam Abu Yusuf, he would get Imam Abu Yusuf so tired that he would tell him that there are many doors in this place. If you want to run, you can run whichever door you want to take. So these are some of the stories, and there are so many lovely, interesting stories that you can read about more if you get hold of these notes as well, inshallah, and read it yourself, inshallah. But there are issues with the book in the sense that be careful of the narrations of Ahmad ibn Muhammad, in the sense that don't reject them, but we just need to do further research on this topic. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you subscribe to this YouTube channel. I hope you share the video with anyone else that you think might benefit from it. I hope you like the video. And until I see you inshallah in the next video, Jazakumullahu khairah for watching the video. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لساني سليم وقلبي كليم